All right, let's get the government's view now. The offer is there. The RCMP are willing to move off wet, sweat, and land in BC. Will that be enough to cool tensions and get rid of the blockades, get the trains running? Let's get the latest on the evolving situation from the Federal Public Safety Minister Bill Blair. Joins me. Great to have you on the program.
Thanks, Evan.
All right, this is the moment. I mean, the RCMP have said we're going to get off that critical piece of land on wet, sweat, and territory. I got to ask you the question, how soon do you believe the blockades can and will come down?
I think the time has come, and I think it's time for the blockades to come down. The RCMP over the past several weeks has been constantly evaluating their deployment and their posture in that region. They went in and enforced the injunction after almost 38 days of discussion with the community. They've done that job, and they've been continuously evaluating their position there. They advise, and they have now advised the traditional hereditary chiefs that they are prepared to change their posture on the roadway itself, to move back to the nearby town of Houston. They still have responsibility to maintain safety in the community. That's their job for all Canadians. But it is very much respectful and in response to the concerns that those hereditary chiefs raised with them.
But for you guys, the federal government, this has got to travel thousands of miles east now to the Mohawk leadership in Tyendinaga, Belleville region. They had set the condition, get rid of the RCMP, our blockades come down. If that's done, is your government in communication to find a way to get rid of those blockades and stop the economic pain and get the trains running?
Listen, I'm very much seized by the urgency of the economic impact and the impact on everyday Canadian lives of these blockades. It needs to be resolved. We've been working tirelessly and around the clock to resolve this peaceably. And part of that was listening to the concerns that were raised by the hereditary chiefs and also by other members in the Indigenous community and their supporters across Canada. We've listened and we've engaged them in dialogue. We've tried, and the RCMP has made a decision, which I think is very responsible and responsive to the concerns that were raised by the hereditary chiefs. And I'm hopeful that those who are on those blockades will see that their discussion has led to a good faith effort to resolve this.
Okay, look, here's what I can't understand. For all that effort that you guys keep touting, the wet, sweat, and hereditary chiefs will not meet with Carolyn Bennett. I don't know when they're going to meet with Mark Miller again. And nobody knows a timeline on this. The wet, sweat, are meeting with the Mohawk chiefs tomorrow morning. When is this going to be over?
And Evan, first of all, the police of jurisdiction in Tyendinaga are the Ontario Provincial Police. They have a jurisdictional responsibility for enforcing the injunction and to resolve that. But they also are informed by all of the efforts that many people are making, including our government, to resolve this peaceably. And for the OPP, their framework for dealing with critical Aboriginal incidents requires that they make every effort to resolve this peaceably. It's informed by their experience at Ipperwash, at Caledonia, and previously at Tyendinaga. And so they have that procedure in place, and they're following that framework. We've been working very hard in support of their good faith efforts to resolve this peaceably.
Respect, I'm flipping the telescope. I get that. Yeah. You and I have discussed that. What I'm saying is you guys don't need the OPP to talk to the leadership of the Mohawk at Tyendinaga and say, now you've got what was the key demand in your solidarity blockade. Now you guys can say, can we offline some of these other issues and get those blockades down? So let me ask you.
And Devin, let me be very clear. I believe it's time for the barricades to come down.
I know you believe that, but have you had concrete discussion with the leadership of the Mohawk, as anyone in your government, to give us a timeline? And if not, why not?
Yeah, there is constant communications between Minister Miller, Minister Bennett. I've even had some discussions with Indigenous leadership across the country, and because I think it's important that they understand our openness to dialogue, but the urgency that motivates all of us to get this resolved as quickly as possible. I don't think it is their intent to have such a significant impact on everyday Canadians. We're all aware that that's unacceptable. We have worked very hard, and I think we've reached the point where the conditions and concerns that were raised by the protesters and by the hereditary chiefs have been addressed by the very responsible work of the RCMP. We believe now that there is an opening for an amenable and peaceful resolution of that dispute. The blockades can in my opinion,
have you got positive signs from there? Any signals from their side?
You know what? There's ongoing dialogue. Frankly, there's an urgency to this. And I'll remain hopeful for the time being, because I don't have a clear signal yet, but I remain hopeful that they understand that urgency and they are prepared to respond.
So that's the moment I was waiting for. No clear signal yet. How about this?
I've not received one, but again, Mark Miller is in discussions more directly with them, and I know that's like an hourly thing. I've been talking to Mark throughout the day. I know he's in very regular communication.
But
with
as the senior minister in charge here, you don't have a clear signal. I'll take that as there is not a clear signal. But what about the Prime Minister? Any plans for him to meet, to go to the wet, sweat, and territory, meet with the hereditary chiefs, meet with the elected chiefs, maybe say, okay, this has been going on for 15 days. The economic pain's real. Time for me to step up.
You know, I will tell you that the Prime Minister has stepped up. He has engaged his entire government, and certainly his entire cabinet, in finding ways to bring this to a peaceful resolution. He's committed, Minister Garneau, myself, Minister Miller, Minister Bennett. We've been engaging with people across the country. We've been talking to our officials. We've been trying to work it out with our provincial counterparts.
Blockade, that's your job. But what is he doing differently to resolve this more quickly?
Well, he has given us a lot of responsibility, and we've gone out there and done the work that he requires of us, and we're working towards that. I will also tell you, Evan, I've been involved in a lot of similar negotiations over the course of my life. And there is a place for the final decision maker, but it isn't in the midst of a negotiation. So we, on his behalf, are working through these things. That's exactly how it's supposed to work.
This is different. Via Rail's never done this. They've never shut down their service. So this is unprecedented like this. But the other...
Then you don't remember 2007 when Tyne-Tenega, Mohawk also shut down that road, and for several days of Via Rail trains were going down there. No, but there is precedent to this. And one of the things I know with absolute certainty, Evan, if we do not make every effort to resolve this peaceably, then the echo of that will continue to cause difficulties potentially across the country. And so we have a responsibility to find a peaceful resolution to this so that we going forward can work back on that agenda.
Everyone wants peaceful, but you can't, but also you can't go on forever. But last question. There's supposed to be in about half an hour the Prime Minister is going to speak to the premiers. Can you give us any indication of what they want from the Prime Minister and what he will say?
Well, I will tell you, I've been speaking to my provincial counterparts in a number of the provinces yesterday, today, and I've got a few more calls to make to the ones particularly that are principally impacted by this. The premiers also know that in their jurisdictions, it's their police services, it's their Solicitor Generals, it's their Police Services Act that has ultimate responsibility for the enforcement of those injunctions. And they are, I think, relying on the hard work of the federal government to attempt to resolve this peaceably. Right. It doesn't relieve them of their responsibility, and we are in no way impeding their action. But I know the cops on those lines. I know what motivates them. They want very much to see a peaceful resolution of this dispute, and they are very hopeful that we'll be successful. And if they're not, they still have a legislative authority and responsibility to uphold the law, to enforce that injunction, and to clear those roadways. But we're all working towards a peaceful end to this.
Minister Blair, you're the Minister of Public Safety. Yep. The former Minister of Justice, Peter MacKay, tweeted out support of people who took pickup trucks and dismantled a barricade. Then he said he doesn't support vigilante justice. What's your comment on what he said?
You know what? He's running for an office I've got nothing to do with. I'm not going to comment on him.
Did it make the situation more dangerous?
And again, that's political rhetoric, and I don't think it's terribly helpful for me in this discussion. My focus is on Canadians who are being impacted by this disruption in service and rail. You know, people who work in factories and the parts can't get delivered, and they're going to get laid off their jobs. People who work in the transportation industry. That's where our focus is, and our focus is also on the concerns of Indigenous community. We've got a responsibility to that reconciliation agenda, and I'm not going to allow myself to get distracted by political noise from people who are just seeking their own office.
I got to leave it there, Minister. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming in a very tense situation.